record engineer and producer. Glyn Johns was born in Epsom, Surrey, England, February 15, 1942. Having been trained as a chorister, and performing in a semi-pro band in his teens, Johns left school to begin an apprenticeship in 1959 at London's ABC Studios as an engineer. Johns has been credited on a great number of rock's classic albums, including those by the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, the Eagles, The Who, the Beatles, The Clash and Ryan Adams. In 1969, Johns was called upon to rescue the troublesome Get Back sessions for the Beatles. Johns compiled several versions of the album which were all rejected by the band before the project was eventually turned over to producer Phil Spector. Spector's version became the released album, which was retitled Let It Be. Johns worked with the Rolling Stones across a span of 15 years, beginning with their earliest recording and continuing through virtually every session during that period, including 1967 Their Satanic Majesty's Request and 1968 Beggar's Banquet. Johns' true calling as a recording legend came from his ability to craft his monstrous John Bonham drum sound on countless Zeppelin records with only 4 microphones. To use this method, you need 2 overhead microphones, ideally large diaphragm condensers, 1 kick microphone, dynamic or condenser, and 1 snare microphone, usually a dynamic. The big picture sound coming from the overheads, while the kick and snare microphones act as spot microphones to fatten the 2 main elements of the kit. The way these 2 overhead microphones work together is very unusual and is part of what makes the Glyn Johns method so interesting. Your first overhead microphone is placed about 3 to 4 feet directly above the snare or middle of the kit. You want to hear a nice blend of snare toms and cymbals all in 1 microphone. Your second overhead microphone is placed just to the right of your floor tom, 6 inches above the rim and facing across the tom towards the snare and hi-hat. The key to getting this microphone in phase with your first overhead microphone is to make sure that the grill of the microphone is exactly the same distance from the center of the snare as the first overhead microphone. With your overheads sounding good, place your kick microphone close to the resonant head or inside the drum and craft your mix. Johns' name can be found on the back of many great albums. If you listen to a classic rock radio station, you are sure to hear some of Glyn Johns' work. Johns is responsible for some of the greatest sounding recordings of his time. His work is still referenced by engineers and producers worldwide. Most recently, Johns has produced the album Ashes and Fire for Ryan Adams and has begun work on Adams' follow-up album. Johns is a well-accomplished engineer and producer and is continuing to further his career.